Had a good Monday. Well, you already know what we're here to talk about, um, but we're gonna go really in depth this time. We're gonna go all over all the hazards: storm surge, flood risk, tornado threat, rainfall. We're gonna try to unpack as much of this as we can and just kind of give a more in-depth analysis of what's going on here. So prepare yourselves because I'm thinking this is going to be a pretty long video. It could span 20 minutes. Hopefully, if I'm efficient enough, it could be about 15. But let's go ahead and jump right into it here. Let's not waste too much time. So here we are with Ian. Ian is now a Category 2 with 100-mile-per-hour winds, is noted here. Storm movement is now to the north-northwest. It's been taking that northward turn that we have been anticipating finally. So we have him sitting at 100 miles an hour with a low pressure at 965 millibars. This is the 8 o'clock advisory. There will be another one at 11 o'clock. So this cone here has moved a little bit further back to the east. This is creating a very dangerous situation over here towards Tampa because this part of Florida is very susceptible to storm surge. In fact, there's a pretty large area of Tampa that's sitting a little bit below sea level actually, and with the exact track that this hurricane would take, it would put it right on the it will put Tampa right on the southern side of the storm, and that southern side will be what kicks up the greatest storm surge and would be most prone to inundating the city. We're talking about a storm surge volume of maybe about 10 to 12 feet are possible. Could be greater if the storm strengthens further. But another issue that we have here as well is this storm is going to be slowing down as it gets closer to land. So this storm will make Category 4. It's going to be at its peak intensity when it goes just about to the north and east of the Florida Keys here in the Barrier Islands on approach to Tampa. It'll start to encounter some wind shear that's associated with this trough that will be settled into the south and east. However, the issue with that is that's exactly what's going to be slowing our storm down and also increasing its size, thus creating much wider impacts for the entire state of Florida, which is why I think the government over there has issued a statewide emergency now. This isn't just part of Florida anymore. This is the entire state. So be prepared if you live in Florida. You're going to feel something from this storm. Even if you aren't necessarily in this cone, because this cone only, as I've said plenty of times before, it only is for the center of the circulation. This is not the entire storm we're talking about. And the storm has already gotten pretty big. I'm not entirely sure what the wind field is right now because they didn't mention it in the 8 o'clock advisory. But last time I checked earlier this afternoon while I was at work, I heard that the tropical storm force winds stretch out to at least about 80 to 90 miles. I can only imagine that has expanded as the storm has gotten stronger. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say about maybe 20 to 30 miles out from the center might be hurricane force winds. But of course, in time, I think that wind field will increase as well. Let's go ahead and talk about the track here as well. Wait, actually, we just got some tropical storm and hurricane warnings issued for the western coast of Florida here, especially over towards Tampa. It looks like there's a few storm surge warnings as well now. But we'll also go ahead and take a look at this track here. The center of the cone. Oh, wow. I'm just not really taking a really close look at this. And this might be a direct landfall for Tampa. That's big. So we'll have to see what happens. But squarely in the sights here is Tampa. And then, of course, as I mentioned, this takes a further northward turn. And this also looks like it makes a close pass to Jacksonville and the Atlantic coastal parts of Georgia and South Carolina. So areas like Savannah, Charleston, and many other areas could be in line for some very nasty conditions over the next few days here. At this point, towards Thursday and Friday, this would be a tropical depression. But even so, we will probably be dealing with some impacts such as inland flooding. There will be an increased tornado threat given the parameters, and we'll go over that in greater detail in a minute. But yeah, this also looks to be a dangerous heavy rainfall event due to the fact that it's going to be stalled out by this trough and also creating a widened area of heavy rain and thunderstorms. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these storm surge warnings first, because that's what everybody's talking about right now, and we're especially concerned for. It's the first time I've ever gotten a look at this graphic, so bear with me here. But simply put, everybody's concerned about this area right here between St. Petersburg and Tampa right here. You can see where Tampa is right here, and you can kind of see this little bay area. And if you actually picture this in your head as I'm telling you about it, or using this cursor here, okay, like say where my cursor is right now is where Ian is. Okay, so this is the center of circulation. Keep in mind, this hurricane is spinning counterclockwise. So once you get towards the southern side of it, all that wind is going to be pushing those waves and increased surge inland. And it goes right into this little bay area right here. And increases the flooding, just causes all sorts of trouble right here. In fact, if I remember correctly, because this also lets you know how big of a weather nerd I am, but I remember this show, It Could Happen Tomorrow. There was one scenario that was discussed. I think it was this very scenario. That show aired like back in 2005, 2006, I think. But it's crazy to think that we're actually seeing this, that I watched that show and I'm seeing this potentially happening right now. Still no guarantees yet. I'm not gonna say that this is like chalked in the books, guaranteed to happen, but it's just kind of eerie to me. I do have a bad feeling about this. I'm hoping that I'm wrong. I'm hoping that somehow this storm weakens. That would be a great scenario, but based off what I've been seeing off the models, I'm not very optimistic, if I could be completely honest. Anyways, let's not forget about these other areas here. We have Cape Coral, we have Naples, we have Port Charlotte, also under storm surge warnings. These areas are also very prone to storm surge. Port Charlotte, we gotta keep a close eye on you as well. There's a little bay area for you as well. And this area, and it could be the same situation as Tampa. I think you guys are elevated just a little bit higher, but not by much. Same can be said for Cape Coral. River's right there. And there's a tributary there. And then the same can be said for Naples. Naples, I think, will have a slightly easier go of things than Tampa or Port Charlotte. I do think the land sits a tiny bit higher. But even so, this is a very tricky, very dangerous situation for anyone on the entire state of Florida, really. Because even though we are looking at the bend right here and starting to head towards the Panhandle, this storm, even if you're on the western side of it, you can still get some pretty significant storm surge in your own right that could cause plenty of problems in its own right. And the same can be said for Jacksonville, although I do think this threat will be a little bit lessened because the wind will most likely be kind of pushing more of it away. I'm more concerned about Savannah than I am Jacksonville right now, but we're not 48 hours out from anything going on here yet, so there's not going to be any watches. I'm also going to be watching Charleston very closely. Shout out to my brother, by the way, if you're watching. But there's a lot of people that are going to be affected by this storm here. So we'll have to, so we're just going to try to do everything we can to cover all of our bases here. Alright, here we go. So now we're going to go ahead and look at the storm surge inundation. And look right around here. There's going to be some red areas here that are going to be above 9 feet. Some scattered red areas. Oh boy. So here's Old Tampa Bay. I've kind of lost my bearings for a moment here. Just give me a sec. Uh-oh. So as this storm would be making landfall, as it moves off, I think right about here is going to be the greatest area of interest. I would say that's on the west or maybe northwest side of Tampa, where we're looking at potentially the greatest storm surge flooding. I think the further east you go, the threat lessens just slightly, but this can easily change. This could change with literally just a handful of miles difference on where the storm makes landfall. So I'm still hesitant to say who's the big winner here, but also look where when I mentioned Port Charlotte, look at this area. This area is even more susceptible to, as we look at the current track right now. There's a lot more red areas here, and this is greater than 9 feet above ground for potential storm surge flooding. And even then, it's more consistent all around. So we'll have to watch areas like Port Charlotte as well, unfortunately, for the increased threat of flooding. And then, of course, the further south you go, the threat decreases a little bit. Not by much, but this is going to be where maybe some of our greatest damage could occur should things stay as they are or get worse somehow. Okay, so we'll try and get an idea also of where the peak surge is, and of course right around Tampa we're looking at about 5 to 10 feet. Dangerous stuff. The Charlotte Harbor is sitting at about 4 to 7 feet. We have the Indian Pass between the Ocala River. We're sitting at 1 to 3 feet. Over towards Jacksonville and the Altamaha. I'm gonna guess that's how you pronounce it. Altamaha sound. All the way to the Flagler and Volusia County line. We're sitting at about 2 to 4 feet. Over towards Naples, we're at 3 to 5 feet, and then Key West is sitting at about 2 to 4 feet as of right now, according to these forecasts. Oh, and Englewood, we're sitting at about 5 to 8 feet, and between the Swanee and Cloak Rivers, we're sitting at about 5 to 8 feet. Gonna be a lot of stuff to keep up with here with this storm. It's the first time I've really gone this in depth with a hurricane ever. I'm honestly more of a tornado guy personally. That's what I studied first, so So we'll go over the flood threat over the next 3 days. Of course, our flood threat is going to be really high over towards Tampa and Orlando. We're going to say Orlando as well because keep in mind, yes, we have storm surge heat. The storm surge threat is going to be over towards the western half of the state and maybe towards the southern half of the state. But we also got to keep in mind this hurricane is more than just storm surge. This hurricane is going to have a lot of heavy rain bands. This storm is honestly already producing rain bands out far ahead of it. Well, technically they're not associated with it, but between the front and between the hurricane and the trough that's spinning up over here, we're getting storms to fire over here well out in advance of the storm. I think Key West and Naples are already getting rainfall to go on top of what's already expected. But to color code everything, here it is right here. The green is a marginal threat, 5% chance. The slight risk, it's pretty much the same as the severe weather threat, 15% chance of flooding, and then towards the red we're at a moderate risk at least 40%. Am I going to say that there's going to be a high risk? I would say that there might be one, or potential for one, right about here in this little slot over in Tampa Bay. I mean, that's not far-fetched at all, though, to be honest. Would honestly be expected. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the rainfall as we go further inland with this storm. So let's get to about 120 hours out. I'll go ahead and click that there, if it'll load. Okay. Should pop up pretty quick. Okay, so here is our greatest swath of heavy rainfall here as this storm would be expected to make landfall. This is according to the GFS, of course. The Euro's not too much different, really. In fact, if anything, I've been seeing an eerie amount of model agreement between these two top models here, which is definitely, it has my confidence up, but it also has me pretty nervous for a lot of people around here. So the greatest rainfall threat, according to the GFS, is going to be just a little bit to the north of Tampa. But over towards Tampa, we're still looking at about maybe 3.8 inches or more. I'm expecting locally higher amounts than that. I do think it's going to be higher than 3.8, to be honest. I'm thinking we could be looking at 5 to 7 to 8 inches easy. But over towards this little swath right here, we're looking at a pocket of almost a foot of rainfall within the next 5 days. And then as this pushes off to the north here and it gets into Georgia, we got a lot of areas that are going to be expecting about at least 2 inches of rainfall once we get into about Thursday and Friday. And then over towards central Georgia, you guys aren't excluded from this either. You guys are looking like you're going to get about maybe 4, maybe even 6 inches of rainfall in some spots within this little yellow area. Even over here towards Atlanta, my neck of the woods, we're looking like we could be getting 2, 3, maybe even 4 inches of rainfall here. And we'll move this along to see just how far north this swath of rain really goes. Shoot, we also have to include South Carolina here. Over towards the coast, we're looking at potentially a good 3, maybe even 4 to 5 inches here. And this also stretches into North Carolina, where some values are we're even getting some 6-inch rainfall amounts there. So we'll move this all the way to about 144 hours out. So this is 6 days out from now. And North Carolina looks like there's some 6, 8-inch rainfall total amounts over here. And then this is also going to stretch a little further to the north into the Appalachians. So Tennessee, Kentucky, even Virginia, you're not excluded from this. We'll go over you guys tomorrow, because I know this video is already getting pretty long. Yeah, we're already going to hit 20 minutes. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up here by looking at the shear here at the highest levels of the atmosphere. And we'll also take a look at the mid-levels real quick. But we'll roll this for just a bit here. So here comes Ian. Notice the counterclockwise flow. So we roll this along. The storm starts to weaken. And I think the greatest threat for tornadoes is probably going to be more or less maybe Friday, Saturday, especially on the northern end of what will be remaining of Ian as it starts to weaken. Because as I mentioned before, as this storm gets closer to land, it's going to slow down and this thing's going to expand rapidly. The wind field's going to expand rapidly. Thus, okay, so think about it like this. We have counterclockwise flow here. So we're going to have basically winds pushing this way. And then you can see these little barbs right here pushing this way. And wherever that meets is going to be where the highest level of wind shear is, and any storms that form over that area will have a increased chance of producing tornadoes. So there it is on Friday, and on Saturday this threat will move further and further to the east. So if I were to really think about it, God, I wish I could draw with this right now. I'm gonna figure out how to do that soon enough. But I'm thinking Thursday and into Friday, this is gonna be our area where the tornado threat's gonna be higher. Then Saturday, I'm thinking right about here. We'll go over it further tomorrow. I'm not gonna tie you guys up too much longer, but that's just what we got going on right now with Ian. There could be plenty of changes with the forecast tomorrow, so take some of this with a grain of salt, although I am pretty confident in it. I cannot speak, but I'm pretty confident in what I've been saying here in this video at this point right now. So we'll just have to wait and see how things play out and hope for the best here. If you want to say a prayer for anyone that's in Florida, go right ahead. Pray for their safety, pray for their health, pray that the storm maybe isn't as bad as it should be. But that being said, this is Tired Metalhead Weather. This has been Tired Metalhead Weatherman, and I will see you guys in the next video. Oh my gosh, I'm tired.